I would also like to invite on the stage the Minister of Liechtenstein, Minister Dominik Hassler. I would like to invite the Minister of Norway. Minister, please. Esper Bath Eden. I would also like to invite the Minister of Iceland, Minister Thordis Gylbadottir, and last but not least, a friend of this format, Maroš Šefčovič, the Executive President of the European Commission, and all of them, they now join me on stage. A round of applause for them. Thank you, and also joining us in this session, we will hear from Enrico Letta. Of course, he's the former Italian Prime Minister. He wrote a report on the single market, which I'm sure all of you have read, and in fact, I was told it's not a Brussels conference if he's not there, so clearly he's here today, and we will also be joined by Rosa Balfour, who's Director at Carnegie Europe, for perhaps a perspective also on the geopolitics. But before we do that, I have a question perhaps for the ministers of Belgium and Iceland, for both Minister Labib and Minister Gylbadottir. You are the co-heads of the EEA Council, and we talked about the 30 years. It's a special number, but before the symbolic nature of the number, why did you think it was important to be here today?
Yes, first of all, let me thank you, all of you, for being here. It's a real pleasure to be here on stage with you to celebrate. And I have to say that, unfortunately, I can't stay the whole conference. You maybe know that this morning President Zelensky came to Brussels, and it had a huge impact in my agenda and engagement. So I will never be, I need to go, unfortunately. But nevertheless, I really wanted to be here for the start of this conference, to share this moment with my dear colleague, with you, and also because for me it's very important, and for three reasons. The first is that the EEA agreement is the most comprehensive agreement of the EU with non-European countries. So it's not nothing. I've heard that it is one of the biggest market, but I think it's the biggest market, by the way, bigger than China. So it has a huge impact in the world. So, and 30 years of cooperation, it translates to the ground in an enormous contribution to economic development and prosperity for 500 million people in 30 states. And by the way, we just had a very good council. We discussed about the challenges that we are facing when it comes about climate change, digital transition, geopolitical situation with two wars, you know, that affect us a lot in the Middle East or in Ukraine. This is challenges that we have in common, that we have to address in common, and when we are united, we are stronger. And second is that it's more than a market, and like Enrico Letta said, to quote him, it is much more than a market. We share the same values, the same principle, and if we look at the context of the world, the core values of democracy, individual freedoms, rule of law, and fundamental rights are certainly under pressure. So more than ever, it's important of being close together. And third, looking ahead and the potential of the relationship, as the title of the conference clearly says we had 30 years of partnership, and it's fit for the future. The way it functions works to address the challenges and opportunities, and I believe it is important to recognize it, and that this way of cooperation can continue to face the challenges and fulfill the potential of releasing more opportunities. And that's exactly what we have seen on the video.
Well, thank you for that, Minister. Of course, the Minister just presented a vision of a partnership that is ongoing, but also standing the test of time in some ways. I wonder, on that note, perhaps if we could get your impressions as to, on days like today, you have to show up. There is something to say.
Yeah, well, I absolutely believe it's very important to celebrate 30 years, and I believe we come from the same generation. So my generation in Iceland does not know anything else than EEA agreement, and it's definitely something that has to be discussed always, because like you mentioned, and we are very well aware of, it's not only about free trade and business, it's about way of life and values and a lot of freedoms that you can never take for granted, and we have those freedoms because of the EEA agreement. Half of Icelandic population doesn't really remember anything else than the EEA agreement, and it becomes 30, and it is a big deal, and especially when we have the situation as we're in now, where the EEA agreement reflects a fundamental system of rule of law and this partnership based on these values and freedoms, and it happens to be the values that increases most of all the quality of life and the standard of living. So when that foundation is literally being attacked today, I think it's extremely important to say, hey, we've been here 30 years, we are a part of a bigger market. It's not only 27 of the single market, it's 30. We're a part of it, we contribute, and it's a win-win. And I know we have in the second panel more value-based discussion, but I just think it's extremely important because we're reflecting on 30 years and we're looking ahead. And I do hope that the EEA agreement will not have any midlife crisis when it becomes 40, being 30 today. And actually my husband is 40 today, not having a midlife crisis though. So I'm happy that we were able to gather this and remind ourselves, but also to put it out there that none of this we can take for granted. And we need to cherish it, and we need to work on it, and we need to also be sure that when things are developing and changing, that we figure the solutions, and we find the solutions, and we figure this out together. And that will also, take a lot of work.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it's very interesting, as you say, that sometimes when you look at deals like this, they seem to be very abstract. But this one is one that objectively you can pinpoint the benefits to an entire generation that only knows this and has come to grow in this environment. So thank you for that to both of you. And now I would like to bring on stage Mr. Letta, who will present his views. Of course, he's done a report, but now he will give us a particular take for this event today. So thank you very much, and a round of applause for him. Mr. Letta.